What happens when the ultimate betrayal meets unimaginable wealth? A simple paternity test was all it took to expose a billionaire's secret, unraveling a meticulously crafted life of deception. We're tracking the seismic shockwaves as his world implodes, revealing the true cost of power when truth finally demands a reckoning. In the glittering world of extreme wealth, where private jets cross continents and billion-dollar deals are sealed with handshakes, there exists an unspoken rule: protect the empire at all costs. But what happens when the foundation of that empire is built on a lie so profound that a single piece of paper can bring it all crashing down? This is the story of Isabella Hartwell, a woman who trusted the wrong man with her heart, and Julian Hartwell, a billionaire who discovered too late that some secrets refuse to stay buried. One paternity test, one moment of truth, and the systematic destruction of everything a powerful man spent decades building. Julian Hartwell was American business aristocracy personified. At 48, his real estate and technology conglomerate was valued at $7 billion, with holdings spanning 3 continents. His marriage to Isabella, a former nonprofit executive 15 years his junior, had been featured in Vanity Fair as the union of purpose and power. They were the couple everyone envied. Glamorous charity galas, coordinated statements on social issues, and an image so polished it seemed unbreakable. But behind the marble columns of their Connecticut estate, their marriage had become something else entirely. After 5 years together, the pressure for an heir had reached a fever pitch. Julian's aging mother made pointed comments at every family gathering. Board members whispered about succession planning. The expectation wasn't subtle, it was suffocating. Isabella noticed the changes first. Julian spent more evenings at his downtown office, his phone face down at dinner, his touch growing perfunctory and distant. When she finally conceived after their 6th year of marriage, her joy was met with his strange, measured response. No tears of happiness, no spontaneous celebration, just a calculated smile and a comment about finally satisfying the board's concerns about legacy planning. Something felt wrong. The way he looked at her had changed, as if he were performing interest rather than feeling it. 3 months into her pregnancy, during what should have been the happiest period of their lives, Isabella made a decision that would alter everything. She hired Marcus Chen, a discreet private investigator whose client list read like a who's who of Manhattan's elite. What he uncovered in just 2 weeks made her blood run cold. Photographs of Julian with Sophia Laurent, a 26-year-old junior executive at his company. Not just professional meetings, but intimate dinners, weekend getaways to the Hamptons house Isabella thought he used for business retreats, and hotel check-ins spanning 18 months. But Isabella didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she did something far more calculated. She scheduled a private paternity test. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by courier to Isabella's personal attorney. Inside, clinical language spelled out what she'd suspected but hoped wasn't true. The child she carried, now 5 months along, was not Julian's biological offspring. The dates aligned perfectly with a period when Julian had been traveling extensively, leaving her alone in their estate for weeks at a time. But here's where the story takes its most devastating turn. Isabella knew exactly whose child she carried. During one of Julian's longest absences, broken and lonely, she'd reconnected with Daniel Reeves, her college sweetheart who'd recently moved back to New York. What started as coffee between old friends became something more during a moment of weakness and wine-fueled vulnerability. It happened once, just once, but once was enough. When Isabella presented Julian with the paternity test results in his private study, his reaction was textbook narcissistic rage. "This is fabricated," he snarled, though his trembling hands betrayed his recognition of the truth. "You're trying to destroy me before I can divorce you for your infidelity." He immediately called his lawyers, demanding they prepare statements, threaten lawsuits, and bury the story before it could breathe. What Julian didn't know was that Isabella had been 3 steps ahead for months. She documented everything. His affair with Sophia, the financial irregularities where company funds had paid for their trysts, the secret apartment he'd leased under an LLC. Her attorney had already prepared a comprehensive filing that would expose not just his personal betrayal, but potential corporate malfeasance that could trigger SEC investigations. "You can try to control this narrative," Isabella told him, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "But I have every receipt, every text message, every flight manifest. You gave me no choice but to protect myself and my child. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to face the truth publicly, or I'm going to ensure that your empire falls even faster than your marriage." The story broke on a Friday morning, strategically timed for maximum impact before the markets opened. Isabella's attorney released a carefully worded statement confirming the paternity test results and Julian's 18-month affair, while simultaneously revealing that corporate funds had been misappropriated for personal use. The reaction was instantaneous and catastrophic. Within the first hour, Hartwell's scandal was trending globally. Financial news networks led with breaking coverage. Julian's company, Hartwell Holdings, saw its stock price drop 23% before trading was halted. 3 major investors immediately filed emergency motions to review the company's financial statements. The board of directors called an emergency meeting, with several members privately discussing forcing Julian out entirely. But the public court was even more brutal than the financial one. Social media dissected every public appearance the couple had made. Influencers created timeline videos showing Julian's calculated deception. Women's rights advocates held him up as the ultimate example of powerful men who demand fidelity while living by different rules. His carefully cultivated image as a family values businessman evaporated in the harsh light of documented proof. The divorce filing came 72 hours after the initial story broke. Isabella's legal team requested half of all marital assets, full custody of the child, and criminal investigation into corporate fund misuse. Julian's lawyers argued that Isabella's infidelity negated her claims, but state law was clear. His documented 18-month affair and financial impropriety far outweighed her single indiscretion. The exodus began within days. Julian's closest business partners, men who'd stood beside him at charity auctions and golf tournaments for decades, suddenly had scheduling conflicts when he called. Board members who'd once praised his vision now leaked stories to the press about his erratic behavior and questionable judgment. His political connections, carefully cultivated over 20 years, evaporated overnight as politicians rushed to return his campaign contributions and distance themselves from the scandal. Then came the reveal that made everything exponentially worse. Sophia Laurent was pregnant. The timeline suggested conception around the same time as Isabella's pregnancy, meaning Julian had potentially fathered 2 children within months of each other, all while publicly advocating for traditional family values. The hypocrisy was too delicious for media outlets to ignore. Sophia, advised by her own legal team, gave an exclusive interview detailing Julian's promises of leaving Isabella, the luxury apartment he'd set up for her, and his assurances that she'd be taken care of when the time was right. Her lawyer confirmed paternity tests were pending, and she was seeking child support at a level commensurate with Mr. Hartwell's considerable means. Julian's attempts to salvage his reputation became increasingly desperate and unhinged. He gave a disastrous television interview where he blamed Isabella for being cold and distant, prompting immediate backlash. He tried to position himself as the victim of a conspiracy, which only made investors more nervous. His company's value continued to plummet as clients canceled contracts and partners terminated agreements, citing reputational concerns. The SEC formally opened an investigation into the misuse of corporate funds. Criminal charges seemed increasingly likely. Julian's legal fees alone were running into millions per month, forcing him to liquidate assets at disadvantageous prices. The empire he'd spent decades building was collapsing at breathtaking speed. 18 months after the paternity test that changed everything, the landscape had transformed completely. Isabella gave birth to a healthy baby boy, with Daniel Reeves, the biological father, actively involved in co-parenting. She settled with Julian for an undisclosed sum, reportedly in the hundreds of millions, along with several properties and ongoing support. Most importantly, she'd reclaimed her narrative, appearing on podcasts and in interviews discussing the courage it takes to expose truth when you're complicit in creating it. "I'm not innocent in this story," she acknowledged in a widely viewed interview. "I made a choice born of loneliness and pain that I'll always regret." But Julian's betrayal was systematic, calculated, and involved weaponizing his power and wealth. "The difference is I own my truth." He tried to bury his and destroy anyone who threatened to expose it. Julian's empire didn't just crumble, it was systematically dismantled. His company was sold in pieces to competitors. He settled with the SEC for $75 million in fines, narrowly avoiding criminal prosecution. His net worth, once estimated at $7 billion, had been reduced to a fraction of that after legal fees, settlements, and asset liquidation. He moved to London, attempting to rebuild away from American media scrutiny, but his reputation preceded him. The scandal fundamentally changed how prenuptial agreements are structured in high-net-worth marriages, with morality clauses becoming standard and independent verification of fidelity increasingly common. Corporate boards implemented stricter oversight of executive personal conduct, recognizing how quickly personal scandals can translate into shareholder value destruction. The Hartwell scandal serves as a modern parable about the true cost of deception when you have everything to lose. Julian Hartwell built an empire through intelligence, ruthlessness, and strategic vision. He destroyed it through arrogance, believing his wealth could insulate him from consequences. But perhaps the most profound lesson isn't about Julian's fall or Isabella's survival. It's about the moment when truth becomes unavoidable, when the carefully constructed lies that sustain empires meet the immovable force of documented reality. One paternity test, 23 words on a clinical document, and billions of dollars of consequences. In a world where power is often mistaken for invincibility, the Hartwell story reminds us that the higher you climb, the more devastating the fall when the foundation cracks. And sometimes, the crack starts with something as simple as the truth. What do you think? Was Isabella justified in her actions, or were both parties equally culpable? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking true stories where wealth, power, and betrayal collide in the most spectacular ways imaginable.